I found my wife's secret affair with our neighbor, and now she's claiming she's entitled to half of our $1.2 million estate. And I just discovered she's been siphoning off $150, $0 of our savings for years, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to uncover something like this, especially not after 10 years of marriage. Things had seemed normal, even good, until I started noticing tiny cracks in the perfect picture I thought I had. It all came crashing down in a way I could never have predicted, and honestly, I still can't believe I'm even writing this out now. But here it is. I found out my wife, Sarah, was cheating on me with our neighbor, Mike. The shocking part, it wasn't just a quick fling, they'd been sneaking around for months. And what's worse, she's now claiming she's entitled to half of our $1.2 million estate, and she's been siphoning off $150, $0 of our savings for years without my knowing. It started about 6 months ago. At first, I just thought Sarah was working late or going out more often. She's always been a bit bitchy, quick to snap, always on edge, but I figured that was just her personality. She's a high-powered real estate agent, always busy, always stressed. But then small things began to add up. Her phone started getting more secretive. She'd hide it when I entered the room, or she'd quickly lock the screen. I noticed her spending more time at the gym, but then I'd find out she'd been meeting Mike there, supposedly for personal training sessions. I didn't think much of it at first. I even told myself she was just trying to stay fit. But the real giveaway came when I saw her text messages. I was snooping. Yeah, I know, it's not the most mature move, but after feeling something was off for months, I couldn't help myself. One night I got curious while she was out at some networking event and I grabbed her phone. That's when I saw the messages. Flirty, explicit, clearly more than just friendly banter. They were talking about meeting up after her gym sessions. Mike was telling her how hot she looked in her workout clothes, and she was responding with some pretty graphic stuff. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't confront her right then. Instead, I spent the next few days digging deeper. I started checking bank records, and that's when I found out she'd been siphoning money, about $150, $0 over the last 3 years, right out of our joint savings account. It was hidden in small transfers, mostly to her personal account, but I caught the pattern. She'd been lying, pretending to be the perfect wife, all while secretly draining our nest egg. I felt sick. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this, especially after all these years? When I finally sat her down, I thought she'd break down or at least admit something. Instead, she spun a web of lies, claiming she was entitled to half the estate because we'd been married for so long, and that she was just trying to secure her future. She told me I was overreacting, that I didn't understand how hard she'd been working to keep us afloat financially, even though I knew she'd been secretly taking money. She called me paranoid and controlling and accused me of spying on her. Honestly, I was furious, more furious than I've ever been in my life. But underneath that rage was a deep, raw hurt. All those years I thought I was building a life with someone I trusted, and it was all a lie. I remember sitting there staring at her, trying to process everything. The betrayal, the lies, the money stolen right under my nose. I felt betrayed, angry, devastated, like I'd been played for a fool. And the worst part, I knew she was planning her next move, maybe trying to squeeze even more out of me. I had to decide what to do next. Do I fight for what's rightfully mine? Do I confront her more aggressively? Or do I just walk away and start over? That's where I am now, standing at a crossroads, trying to figure out how to navigate this mess she's created. After I confronted Sarah that night, everything changed. She sat across from me, her face a mask of calm that I knew was just a facade. She insisted she wasn't cheating, just finding comfort with Mike because I was never around, busy with work and always tired. She said she deserved some happiness, that I was too controlling and paranoid. She looked me straight in the eye and lied through her teeth, claiming she never had sex with Mike, just kissed him a few times. Honestly, I didn't even care about the specifics anymore. The trust was shattered and I could see right through her bullshit. I felt a strange mix of rage and sadness. Rage because she'd betrayed me so completely, and sadness because I genuinely loved her. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let things get so bad. I'd always been the one working hard, providing for us, thinking we had some kind of future together. But that future was just a lie. She'd been planning her escape, or maybe just her own selfish gain, for months. I realized I was the fool for trusting her, for believing she was the woman I married. The next few days were a blur. I started digging into everything I could find: bank statements, hidden emails, her phone. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. That's when I discovered the full extent of her scheme. Not only had she been siphoning money, but she'd also been secretly making arrangements to claim a share of the estate. She claimed she was entitled after all. She argued we'd been married for over a decade and she had a right to her fair share. She kept saying how she'd been a good wife, supporting me through my career, and that I owed her because I hadn't always been the most attentive husband. My head was spinning. I'd always thought we had a solid life, a future built on mutual respect and love, but she was out for herself, plain and simple. And now she was trying to leverage her rights to our estate, claiming she deserved half of everything: our house, the investments, the savings. The house alone is worth $1.2 million, and she said she'd fight for her entitlement, even if it meant going to court. I was stunned. How did she think she could just take half of what I worked so hard for all these years? I started to realize that her claims weren't just about money, they were about control. She wanted to punish me for not paying enough attention, for working late or traveling for business. She wanted to turn everything upside down. That's when I decided I needed to do something about it. I couldn't let her just walk away with my life's work, my savings, everything I built. I knew I had to act fast, but I also knew that going to a lawyer and preparing for a fight would take time. I needed to get ahead of her plans, figure out how deep her deception ran, and protect myself. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She'd been lying to me for years, pretending to be this perfect wife, all while secretly siphoning money and planning her escape route. I felt betrayed, not just by her cheating, but by her greed, her manipulations. It was like waking up from a nightmare. I had trusted her with everything: my heart, my money, and she'd used that trust to stab me in the back. I started to see her for what she really was: a selfish, manipulative woman who thought she was entitled to my entire life. And I knew then that I wouldn't let her take it all without a fight. Once I realized the full scope of her betrayal, I knew I had to act quickly. I started consulting with a lawyer, someone who specialized in divorce and asset division. I told him everything about the affair, the siphoning of our savings, her claims to the estate. The lawyer listened carefully, then advised me to gather all evidence possible: bank statements, emails, text messages, anything that could prove her dishonesty and financial deception. I spent the next few days going through every piece of paper, every digital trace, trying to piece together her web of lies. Meanwhile, Sarah was still acting as if nothing was wrong. She continued her usual bitchy attitude, snapping at me over small things, pretending to be the perfect wife in front of friends and family. But behind the scenes, she was planning her next move. She kept insisting she was entitled to half of everything, throwing around words like marital assets and community property, as if she knew the law better than I did. She told everyone she was the victim, that I was controlling and unfaithful. No one knew the real truth, and I was careful not to let her manipulate the narrative. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with legal backup. I arranged a meeting with my lawyer and we drafted a strategy. I wanted to protect what was mine: our house, our investments, the money I'd earned. I also planned to reveal her secret affairs and financial misconduct, making it clear she couldn't just walk away with half of everything without consequences. I felt a strange mix of determination and dread. This was the moment I'd been preparing for, to stand up for myself against her greed and lies. I also started secretly recording her. I installed a few discreet security cameras around the house, nothing overt, just enough to catch her in the act if she tried anything more. I wanted undeniable proof of her cheating, her lies, and her scheme to drain our assets. Every day, I felt like I was walking on thin ice, knowing she was capable of anything. I kept my cool, but inside I was boiling with anger. How dare she betray me so blatantly? How dare she think she could just take everything I worked for and walk away? One evening, I caught her in the act of trying to transfer more money. I had set up a hidden camera in our study, and I saw her on her laptop, typing away, trying to move another $50, $0 into her personal account. I was stunned. That was the last straw. I confronted her right then and there, showing her the footage. Her face turned pale for a moment, then she scoffed and lied again, claiming she was just doing some personal shopping. I didn't buy it. I knew she'd been lying about everything. That night, I felt a mix of rage and clarity. I knew I had to make a move. I couldn't let her keep siphoning off our savings or manipulate the situation. I decided I'd file for divorce, but I also wanted to hit her where it hurt, by exposing her lies and financial misconduct publicly if needed. I wasn't going to let her walk away with half of my estate, especially after she'd betrayed me so thoroughly. I also started to contemplate what kind of future I wanted, whether I should fight for reconciliation or cut my losses completely. As I prepared for what was coming next, I couldn't help but reflect on how deeply she'd hurt me. All these years I thought we had a partnership, a shared life. Instead, I found out I was just a paycheck, a fool who believed in a false image. I had to brace myself for the storm ahead, court battles, accusations. The possibility of losing some money, but also the chance to finally take control of my life again. I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot, but I was determined to see it through, no matter what. The day I filed for divorce was one of the hardest days of my life, but also the most necessary. I sat there in the lawyer's office, looking at the paperwork, knowing that this was the beginning of a long fight. I didn't want to just end the marriage. I wanted justice. I wanted her to pay for the betrayal, for siphoning off our savings, for thinking she could claim half of everything I built. I made it clear that I had proof, those recordings, bank statements, and her own lies, and that I was prepared to fight for every penny. Sarah, of course, threw a fit when she found out. She called me every name in the book, screaming about how I was ruining her life, how she deserved what was hers, and how she was entitled to half of our estate because we'd been married so long. Her voice was bitchy and manipulative, trying to guilt me into dropping the case. She told me I was just jealous, that her affair was just a way to find happiness, and that I was overreacting. But I wasn't having it. I knew her game. Over the next few weeks, the legal process kicked into high gear. I kept gathering more evidence, making sure I had everything to back up my claims. I hired a forensic accountant to trace every dollar she'd siphoned off, and I found out she'd been funneling money into accounts in her parents' names, hiding it from me. It was clear she'd been planning this for a while. Meanwhile, she kept trying to manipulate everyone around her, spinning stories about how I was controlling, unfaithful, and unfair. She even tried to turn some friends against me, claiming I was emotionally abusive. That's when I realized she'd become a master at gaslighting. During this time, I kept my distance emotionally. I was numb, mostly. I'd loved her once, but now I just felt cold and angry. Every night, I'd sit in my office, staring at the pile of evidence I'd collected, wondering how I'd let it get this far. I kept thinking about all the years we'd spent together, her bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, and how I'd been blind to it all. It was a wake-up call for sure. I realized I'd been so focused on making the marriage work that I ignored the signs of her greed and betrayal. The most surprising thing was how she kept insisting she was the victim. She claimed I was trying to control her, that she only cheated because I was never around, and that her siphoning money was her way of saving herself from a marriage she no longer wanted. She even said I was a terrible husband for not noticing her needs. Honestly, I was sick of her lies. I saw right through her manipulation. She was trying to paint herself as the wronged wife, but her actions told a different story. Things reached a boiling point when she demanded she get half of everything: our house, the savings, the investments, despite her secret affair and the financial deception. She claimed she deserved it all because of her years of sacrifice. I couldn't believe how brazen she was. I told her that her betrayal invalidated her claims, and I was prepared to prove that in court. I even warned her that I had enough evidence to show she'd been lying about her fidelity and siphoning money. That shut her up for a while, but I knew she'd keep fighting. It was around this time that I started to realize how much she'd changed. She no longer looked like the woman I married. Her bitchy attitude had turned even nastier, and she was clearly desperate to hold onto her share of the estate. But I was done playing nice. I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine and to expose her for who she really was. I knew this was just the beginning of a brutal legal battle, but I was prepared. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I refused to let her win. Not without a fight. The court date finally came, and I was both nervous and angry. Seeing Sarah in the courtroom, her bitchy smirk trying to mask her desperation, only fueled my resolve. She was trying to look confident, but I could tell she was unraveling. Her lawyers argued that she was entitled to half of everything because we'd been married so long, and that her affair was just a minor mistake. They even tried to claim I was emotionally abusive, which made me laugh bitterly inside. I had all the evidence, her texts, the bank transfers, the recordings, and I made sure it was all presented clearly. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out everything, the affair, the siphoning of our savings, her lies, and her greed. I explained how she'd manipulated everyone around her, how she'd been planning this for years. I told the judge about the secret accounts, the transfers, and her claims to the estate. I made it clear that her behavior had invalidated her claims to half our assets. I also presented the evidence of her affair with Mike, which I had recorded secretly. I saw her scowl when I played the recordings, and I knew she was realizing her game was up. The judge listened carefully, and after some deliberation made a ruling. She awarded me the house, the majority of the investments and the savings, minus the amount Sarah had siphoned off, which I would recover through legal channels. Sarah was furious, shouting and crying, insisting she was entitled to more, but her arguments fell flat. The court also ordered her to pay back the stolen money, plus legal fees. It was a small victory, but it felt like justice. After the court, I felt an odd mixture of relief and exhaustion. I had fought hard and I'd won the main battle, but the emotional damage was heavy. I felt betrayed, angry, and hurt, more than I had ever felt before. I couldn't believe she'd been planning this behind my back all those years, secretly taking my money and trying to claim a share of what I'd built. I knew I needed some time to heal, to process everything. I also knew I'd have to rebuild my life from scratch. Sarah, on the other hand, was not happy. She refused to accept the court's decision, threatening to appeal and trying to manipulate the situation. She called me heartless, accused me of ruining her life, and kept insisting she deserved what's hers. I just walked away, knowing I'd done everything I could. I realized that some people just don't change, no matter what you do. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her greed, they were all still there, bubbling just beneath the surface. Looking back, I see how much I've learned. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. I thought I knew Sarah, but I was blind to her true nature. This whole experience has taught me to be more cautious, more aware of the signs of deception. I'll never let myself be so naive again. And honestly, I'm relieved that I took a stand, that I fought for what was rightfully mine. It's going to take time to recover emotionally, but I'm moving forward stronger and wiser. From this, I want to tell anyone else out there who's been betrayed, don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts. And when someone shows you their true colors, don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Because ultimately, the truth always comes out, sometimes painfully, but it's the only way to truly reclaim your life. Now that it's all over, I find myself sitting here, reflecting on everything I've been through. The legal battles, the betrayal, the anger, it's a lot to process. But beneath all that, I feel a strange sense of relief. I finally stood up for myself and didn't let her manipulation or lies define me. I lost a marriage, sure, but I gained clarity and a sense of control I never had before. The money, the house, the betrayal, they all taught me something crucial. Trust is fragile, and people can hide their true selves behind a mask for years. I've learned that greed and selfishness can turn even the most seemingly perfect relationships into a web of lies. Sarah was never the woman I thought she was. She was just good at hiding her true nature until it all came crashing down. The pain of her cheating and theft will stay with me for a while, but I know it won't break me. I've come out of this stronger, more cautious, and more aware of what I need to watch for in the future. The hardest part is realizing that I have to rebuild my life from scratch emotionally. Trusting again will be hard, but I'm determined to move forward. I'm focusing on myself, on healing, on rediscovering what happiness means for me outside of a broken marriage. I've started seeing a therapist, talking through everything, trying to forgive myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I know I can't change what happened, but I can control how I respond to it. Looking back, I wish I could tell my past self to pay closer attention, to trust my gut more, and not to ignore the signs of greed and manipulation. I also want others to know that it's okay to fight back, to stand your ground. No amount of money or material possessions is worth losing your peace or your integrity. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away, stand up for yourself, and refuse to be a victim of betrayal. This whole ordeal has been a brutal lesson, but it's also a wake-up call. I've learned that betrayal isn't just about infidelity or money. It's about recognizing your worth and never settling for less. I hope my story serves as a warning, but also as a reassurance. No matter how deep the betrayal, you can come out the other side. You can rebuild, you can recover, and most importantly, you can reclaim your life.